Hi there guys, and welcome to another video. This video is the first in an updated series all about Nextcloud and other tools that integrate with it. So if that sounds interesting, let's get started. Hey, hi there guys. So it's been a while since we've seen each other, hasn't it? Well, sadly, it's not because I've been on a vacation on a Caribbean cruise or something nice like that. I managed to get myself a head injury along with a side order of concussion. Well, luckily, my brain is just about still working, so I thought it's high time to get out a new video, and so why not start a whole new series? Now, don't worry, I know I've got a few series that are going at the moment, and they're all going to be completed, but this one is going to be about Nextcloud, as it's been a few years since my last one. So I want to make a really complete guide, not only showing how to set up a basic Nextcloud instance, but also add some more advanced features to it after we've got it going. And so these advanced features are going to be things like adding full elastic search inside of Nextcloud. This allows us to add a search index to Nextcloud. That allows us to do things such as even search for text inside documents we've got on the Nextcloud server. And I'm sure that might be a feature that a lot of you will find really useful. And another thing, we're going to be adding OnlyOffice, which basically just gives Nextcloud the same functionality as, say, Google Docs, but all self-hosted. And also we'll be looking at adding external storages, and a whole bunch of other Nextcloud tips and tricks. So, before I go on, I better remember that some of you out there may not even know what Nextcloud is. So to tell you guys who don't know, I'm going to borrow a section from my old Nextcloud video, which explains what it is. So, what is Nextcloud? Well, it's a bit like Dropbox, and it's a bit like Google Drive. And that's not only because it's free with no subscription charges, it's all open source, and it can run on your own server. So it really is your own personal cloud. And if you're not sure why that's good, well, let me let you into a little secret. Come here, a little closer. If the cloud isn't on your own server, then the cloud is just someone else's computer. And do you really trust that someone else? Do you trust them to keep your data private and not mine the data? And do you trust them to keep that data secure? Well, if you don't like me, then Nextcloud is definitely for you. Be like the German federal government and set up your own private cloud using the open source software which is called Nextcloud. And don't worry, you're not giving up any functionality over those commercial cloud providers. There's apps for all desktop systems such as Windows, Mac and Linux, and apps for your cell phone and tablets, with apps for both Android and iOS. Okay, so thank you Space Invader from the past for that explanation. I think now let's just move on and get it set up. Now, setting up Nextcloud isn't as easy as just installing something like Plex or Emby, because setting up Nextcloud requires more than just the Nextcloud container. Well, I guess that isn't really 100% true. I should rephrase that. To install Nextcloud and have it run well, we need more than the Nextcloud container. For best performance, we should have a separate database. In this video, I'm going to be using MySQL, so I'm going to set up the container, MariaDB. Now, it doesn't matter which version you use. You can use the official version here, but I'm going to use the Linux server version here. So I'm just going to click onto install. Now, the first thing to set here is the MySQL root password. You can set that whatever you want. Now, this password isn't for any database. It's the root password for the MariaDB container. Okay, so next, MySQL database. You used to have to create the database for MariaDB using command line, but now this template's been updated and we can create a database which is first created when the container's first run. So that's really nice. So here we need to name the database. You can name it whatever you like, but I'm going to name mine Nextcloud. Now here under MySQL user, we can create a user that is allowed to access the database that we just created above. And again, because it's going to be Nextcloud using this database, for the MySQL user, I'm also going to call it Nextcloud. Okay, so next here, MySQL password. This is the password for the database that we just created. So enter a nice strong password here. Now this should be different to the MySQL root password at the top. Okay, so remote SQL, we don't need this. So I'm just going to click remove and remove that from the template. So with that done, I'm just going to click apply and that will pull down the container. Okay, so with that done, you guessed it, let's click done. And I'm going to go to the Docker tab now. And I'm just going to check the log files here just to check I can't see any errors. and everything looks good. So I can close this now. So now we've got our database ready. We can start installing Nextcloud. So now I'm going to go onto the Shares tab here, and I'm going to create a share for the Nextcloud user data. Now there's one thing that people get confused of with Nextcloud, is it doesn't automatically give access to all of the shares on your server. Now it is possible to give access to these shares, and I'll show you how to do that later when we set up what's called external storages, but we do need a separate share which will be used by Nextcloud for all of the data for the users that we create inside of Nextcloud. So I'm going to click Add Share, and I'm just going to call the share Nextcloud. Now whether you use a cache pool for new files or directories, that's up to you. Now I'm not going to cache enable this share myself, because remember, any data that's written to the cache drive, yes, it might be faster to write it there, but unless your cache pool has dual cache drives in RAID 1, then the data that will be written to the cache pool won't be protected against failure. And the server here I'm installing Nextcloud onto, it only has a single cache drive, so I think it's safer to have the data written directly to the array, just in case the cache drive should fail before mover runs and moves the data. But what I am going to do, instead of having this share across all of the disks, I'm just going to have my Nextcloud share on disk 3. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to click Add Share, and done. So now I've got my Nextcloud share here, ready to use with the Nextcloud container. So I'm going to go back to the Apps tab now, and obviously do a search for Nextcloud. And again, we could use any of these two Nextclouds. I'm going to use the Linux server one here, so I'm going to click Install onto that. And for the branch, I'm just going to choose the default. Okay, so there's very little we need to set up in this template. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to change the web UI port here from 443 to 444. That's because if you ever want to connect to the Unraid web UI using HTTPS, then Unraid would use port 443 for that. So I'm going to change the Nextcloud port to this one. Okay, so next the data path. That's the share we just created. And with that done, I'm going to click Apply and pull down the container. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to go back to the Docker tab here. And again, I'm going to look at the logs like I did with the database. And at the moment, you can see it says install is executing. So I'm just going to wait, and I'll be able to tell when everything's done, when at the bottom of the log, it says starting services and done. Okay, so now I'm going to click on Nextcloud and go to Web UI. Don't worry about it saying your connection's not private. That's perfectly normal. Just ignore that and continue. So the first thing we need to do is to create an admin account. So I'm going to do that now. Now it's very important that this password you create here is a very strong password, because remember, Nextcloud will be accessible from the internet, so you want a really decent password. And now under storage and database, I'm going to click here and I'm going to choose MySQL MariaDB here. And now here I have to put in the database user. Now hopefully you wrote down what you put in the MariaDB template. And at the bottom here where it says localhost, here we need to put the local IP address of the Unraid server. And that's going to be the same IP as what you got in the top bar here when we're accessing Nextcloud. So for me, that's 10.10.20.197. Now we also need to put the port. So for that, I'm going to put a colon and then 3306. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to leave this ticked here to install recommended apps and click finish. And I'm going to save the password I created into my Bitwarden. Okay, so here we are. Nextcloud all set up and working. Now obviously at the moment this is only accessible on our local network, and that's no good. For a cloud service it needs to be accessible from anywhere in the world. So to do that, then we need a domain name and to create a subdomain off that. Now if you don't have a domain name or you don't know how to make a subdomain, then I suggest you watch the video I've made here, which will show you how to do just that. So obviously because I've made that video, I'm not going to go into much detail here. But you can see in Cloudflare, I've got this domain here, yourdomain.1. I'm going to use this. And I'm going to click onto DNS and go there where I can create a subdomain. Now the subdomain that I'm going to create is going to be a CNAME, which is going to be pointing to a DNS tracker that's pointing to the IP address of my ISP's WAN So basically the subdomain nextcloud.yourdomain.1 is pointing to my home IP address. Now whilst I'm on the Cloudflare page, I'm going to go to the top here and go to my profile, and here I'm going to go to API tokens, and under global API key I'm going to click onto view, pop in my Cloudflare password. With that I'm going to click onto view. I'm going to click where it says click to copy because I want that on the clipboard. I'm going to need this key later when I'm setting up the reverse proxy. So for now, I'm just going to put that and save that somewhere. So with that done, I'm going to go back to the Unraid web UI. And now we're going to need a reverse proxy. Now you can use either Swag, Nginx Proxy Manager, or really any reverse proxy that you want. I like Swag, so that's what I'm going to install now. So I'm going to do a search for Swag. Now this isn't going to be a tutorial how to set up Swag. I'm just going to go through how to do it for this Nextcloud container. That's all. And so in the template, there's a few things I'm going to change. Now again, I'm going to change port 443 here. I don't want it to be that, so I'm going to make it port 1443. And also port 80, I'm going to make that to be port 180. Now for the URL, for me, that's going to be my domain name, which is yourdomain.1. And for validation, because I'm using Cloudflare, I'm going to use what's called DNS verification. So here where it says validation, I'm going to type DNS, and under subdomains, because I'm using DNS verification, I can use what's called a wildcard certificate. So I'm going to type in wildcard here to be able to use that. And here under DNS plugin, I'm going to leave that as Cloudflare. And here under email, you want to put in your email address. And here where it says only subdomains, I only want an SSL certificate creating for the subdomains. And a subdomain meaning things like Nextcloud dot, that kind of thing. I'm going to set that to true. Okay, everything else I can just leave that as it is. And so with that done, I'm going to click apply and pull down the container. Okay, so with that done, I can close this, and then I want to go back to the Docker tab. And we can see that Swag's running here. And like normal, I like to look at the logs. Now I'm expecting there to be an error. Here you can see it's asking me to confirm whether I've supplied a valid Cloudflare API. Well, I haven't done that yet, and that's why we took a note of that earlier. So let's close the log file here and stop Swag. And so now we're going to put that API key in. Now I'm going to do that in terminal. So I'm going to open the terminal window here. And what I type in is going to be in the description. I'm going to type nano/appdata/user/DNS-conf/cloudflare.ini. Okay, so this is where we put in, first where it says Cloudflare email equals here, this is where I'm going to put in the email address that I use to log into Cloudflare with. So I'm going to put in the email address here, and next here, I'm going to put in the API key. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to press Ctrl and O to write out the file, and enter to confirm the file name, and now Ctrl and X. So I can close this window here, and now start back up Swag, and again I'm going to go to the log, and now it's trying to create an SSL certificate. So with any luck, that will complete correctly. Great, that's done, and it says server ready. Okay, so I can close the logs. So the reverse proxy, it's not actually going to work yet. If in a web browser now, I go to nextcloud.yourdomain.1, it says the site can't be reached. Now of course this is the case because the traffic goes over port 443 and I don't have that open in my router. Okay, so now let's have a quick think about how the subdomain nextcloud.mydomain.1 is going to be able to connect through to Nextcloud. So in Cloudflare, I created the subdomain which pointed through to a CNAME which referenced a DNS tracker Space Invader 1 server.dns.org, which points to my home ISP WAN address. So when I go to nextcloud.mydomain.1, that goes through the internet over port 443 and then hits my router firewall, and then my router needs to forward the traffic coming in on port 443 to the reverse proxy. If you remember, my reverse proxy is using port 1443, so the port forwarding on the router must direct port 443 to 1443. And so once this traffic gets to the reverse proxy, it's up to the reverse proxy to realize the subdomain is nextcloud.mydomain.1 and then send that traffic across to Nextcloud. Okay, so like I said earlier, the reason at the moment my swag reverse proxy is not working is because I haven't forwarded port 443 to the reverse proxies port 1443. Now I say the reverse proxies port 1443, but because the reverse proxy is a container on the Unraid server, the router needs to forward port 1443 to the IP address of the Unraid server. Now all routers are different, and if you don't know how to port forward on your router, then just Google the model number and you'll find something online that will show you how. Okay, so now on my router I've done all of my port forwarding, so now I'm going to go back to a browser and test that address again. Okay, so with that port forwarded, I'm going to click on reload here and reload the page, and now we can see welcome to your swag instance. So now I know that I've got as far as the reverse proxy. So now what I need to do on the reverse proxy is to configure that to point to Nextcloud. So let's do that now. Now I'm going to go back to the Unraid web UI and I'm going to stop swag. So now I'm going to open up a terminal window and I'm going to type nano space /mnt /user /. Now just a quick tip for you guys who are not used to working in the terminal. When typing a location, you can use autocomplete. So in this location, the next part I want to go to is app data. So if I just type the letter A, which is obviously the first letter of app data, and then press tab, it will autocomplete that word for me. So much easier. Anyway, carrying on, /swag /nginx /proxy-conf. Now in this directory, I'm going to type nextcloud.subdomain.conf.sample and hit enter to edit this file. And this is the reverse proxy configuration file to proxy Nextcloud. This line here, server_name, and then this part here, nextcloud.asterisk, this relates to the subdomain that you want to have connected to Nextcloud. I called mine Nextcloud, so this is fine for me. But if you didn't want to use the subdomain Nextcloud to connect to Nextcloud, maybe you just want something like cloud, then you'd change this here to cloud.asterisk. So whatever you want to have as the subdomain, put it in here. And you see at the top here, this writing in blue. This is some changes that we have to make in the actual Nextcloud configuration in Nextcloud itself. So to make it easier, you might want to copy and paste this text and keep it somewhere for in a moment when we edit that file as well. Okay, so everything in this file we don't really need to edit. By default, this file uses a custom Docker network, which again we're going to set up in a moment, and it connects to the Nextcloud container using the name as you can see here. So this doesn't need to be changed. The only time you need to change it is if for some reason you rename the Nextcloud container to something else. And the port number you can see here, we don't need to change this either. Now you might think that's strange because earlier on I changed the port mapping to be port 444. But that mapping is on the Unraid side, and on the Docker side it's still port 443. Now because this configuration file is resolving the IP address of the Docker container through its name, that name resolves to the internal Docker network IP that you can see here. So in most cases there's nothing you actually need to change in this configuration file, although there is one thing we might have to change, which we'll look at in troubleshooting later. So for most people, all you have to do is to save the file as .conf instead of .sample. And in terminal to do that, we need to press Ctrl and O. And for the file name, we just need to delete the .sample and hit enter. Then we just hit Y to save under a different name, and then Ctrl and X to exit out of Nano. Okay, so I'm actually going to leave this window open now, so I can have a look at this here. And let's pull this to one side, make it a little smaller, and I'm going to open up another terminal window now. And in this window, I'm going to type nano /mnt /user /appdata /nextcloud /www /nextcloud /config /config.php. So basically this location here. Okay, so I'm going to press enter, and the first thing I'm going to do under trusted domains here, so I'm going to add that here. Okay, so there's my domain, nextcloud.yourdomain.1. So you'd put your domain there, Maybe it would be nextcloud.mylovelyunraidserver.com, whatever it might be. Put your subdomain and domain name in here. Okay, so next, underneath this bracket here, I'm going to add the trusted proxies, telling Nextcloud to trust Swag as a reverse proxy. So I'm going to paste that in here. Okay, so next, I need to change this line here, the overwrite CLI URL line. So I'm going to delete that out by pressing Ctrl and K, and then enter to make a space. And I'm going to replace that with the value change to https:// and then my subdomain. So you put that to whatever yours is. So underneath that line, I'm going to put the next line here, this overwrite host line here, again with my subdomain and domain in here. And then finally one last line to put in. Underneath here, I'm putting the overwrite protocol line just exactly as it is here. So with that done, I'm going to press Ctrl and O to save the file, and enter to confirm the file name, and Ctrl and X to exit. Okay, so we're almost there. So I'm going to close these two terminal windows now. I'm going to stop Nextcloud, and because I want Swag and Nextcloud to be able to talk to each other using the container name, then I need to create what's called a custom Docker network. So to do that, I'm going to open up a terminal window, and I'm going to type Docker network create and proxynet. Okay, so that's created the custom Docker network. Now if we reboot the server, that network will go. So what we want to do is make sure that's persistent. So to do that, I'm going to go to settings here, then Docker, and I'm going to temporarily stop the Docker service, and over here toggle to the advanced view, and here where it says preserve user defined networks, I'm going to set that to yes, and then re-enable the Docker service and click apply. Okay, so with that done, I'm going to go back to the Docker tab, and first I'm going to edit Swag here, and here under network type, I'm going to change that from bridge to proxynet, and I'm going to click apply. Now I want Nextcloud to be on the same network, so I'm going to edit Nextcloud and change that to proxynet as well. Okay, so with that done, I need to make sure the database is running, so I'm going to start that up, and I'm going to set that to auto start. Obviously, I need Nextcloud to be running, so I'm going to start that up, and also set that to auto start. And finally, obviously I need Swag to be running as my reverse proxy, so I'm going to start that up, and also set that one to auto start. So now, let's test out Nextcloud. So now I'm going to go to Nextcloud, and click on Web UI, and so here we are at the login page. So I'm just going to enter my credentials here. And here I am in Nextcloud, connected to my own domain. Okay, so now let's have a look at a problem you might have. If you happen to start up Nextcloud and you get this error here, 502 bad gateway, then we can make a change in the Swag configuration file that hopefully should fix this. Then open a terminal window, and again, we want to edit the Nextcloud configuration file here, and we're going to change two things. So the first thing here, where it says set upstream app, now we don't have to use the actual name of the container. We can use the IP address of where the container is running. So that's the IP address of the server. So for me, that's 10.10.20.197. Now, because I'm using the actual IP address here, then I need to specify the port number that I've changed here as 444. So for upstream port, I'm going to change from 443 to 444. Then I'm going to press Ctrl and O to exit, and enter, and Ctrl and X. Okay, so any changes you make with Swag, you always must restart the container. So now I'm going to restart the container, and again go to Nextcloud's Web UI, and I'm back inside Nextcloud. So if you get a 502 error, that fix should hopefully sort you out. And I guess that brings us to the end of this first part of the Nextcloud series. Now I'm looking forward to showing you Elasticsearch in the next part. But until then, I want to thank you all for watching, and I want to give an extra huge thanks to all of my patrons and supporters out there. Thank you so much guys for enabling me to make these videos. I really do appreciate it. And if any of you out there like the video, then please just take a moment to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please share this video with anyone who you might think will find it useful. Anyway guys, it's time for me to go now, but whatever you're up to for the rest of the day, I hope it's good, and I'll catch you in the next video.